Prescription products require completion of an online medication consultation with an independent healthcare provider through the LifeMD platform and are only available if prescribed. Subscription required. Individual results may vary. Additional restrictions apply at lifemd.com. Read all warnings before using GLP-1s. Side effects may include a risk of thyroid C-cell tumors. Do not use GLP-1s if you or your family have a history of thyroid cancer.
If you've struggled for years to lose weight and have given up hope, did you know you can now access GLP-1 prescription medications through LifeMD? LifeMD is now offering eligible patients online access to GLP-1s, the breakthrough prescription medication that can help you lose body fat and weight. Listen to what people are saying.
I've been able to live my normal lifestyle, and I've lost 20 pounds already. It changed my life.
I wasn't expecting it to shut off the food noise. This was life-altering, and if I can do it, I feel like anybody can do it.
And here's the best part. Your insurance may cover 100% of the cost of your medication. So go to trylifemd.com to have your eligibility checked right now. Get started today at trylifemd.com. That's trylifemd.com.
Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragon Gate is, how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragon Gate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Music of the Mat Remix on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. I'm your host, Andrew Rich, and today I'm joined by a first-time guest here on the show. It's Chris Whitehead. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Andrew. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you're here. Definitely your first time on. I mainly know you from the Discord, but you've also written a couple of articles this year for VOW, one about Match of the Year data, another about the wrestler Suri. So you're technically part of the crew here, Chris, so welcome aboard.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to do both the podcast network and the website in the same year. Very exciting.
Now, you live in Los Angeles, correct?
I do, yes.
Yeah, so congrats on the Dodgers there. I'm a Red Sox guy, obviously, but whenever the Yankees get their butts kicked, is a good time by me. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's truly a bonding moment for anybody that I know that's a Red Sox fan. Surprisingly, a few people out here even who were shared goals, even if different outcomes. If you see what I mean with the Yankees, yes.
Yeah. Did you go to the parade at all, or no?
I did not. I don't love being in crowds of tens of thousands of people. But I know a lot of people that did that had a great time. It seemed like the vibes were immaculate. So you love to see that. Fair
enough, for sure, yeah. Well, today's episode here, Chris, the topic is called curtain jerkers. And for those that don't know what that term means, a curtain jerker is the first wrestler to come out on a wrestling show for the opening match. They're jerking the curtain and stepping on through. And you don't really hear that too often nowadays. It's an older term, and it's derogatory as well. It's not meant to be nice. And I think part of the reason that it's gone out of fashion is there really isn't that much of a stigma anymore of being the opening match of a show. I think especially in America and in the bigger promotions. We've seen plenty of matches that open shows that are world title matches, main eventers opening the shows. And I can think of just a lot of amazing AEW pay-per-views. Some of the best matches on those shows are the opener. Recently at Wrestle Dream, the opener was Hangman versus Jay White, and that was a fantastic match. And it's true for Dynamite as well. They've done plenty of episodes of Dynamite where the opener is a big match, a world title match, a big draw. Omega versus Danielson comes to mind, of course. So things have definitely changed in that respect over the years there, Chris, for sure.
Yeah, the lexicon of wrestling is so fascinating, endlessly rewarding, and curtain jerker has always been one of my favorite kind of just silly little expressions that comes out of the world of wrestling. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. And actually, I think that some of the same things you said about the more modern American approach to building a wrestling card is, I think we're seeing that a little bit in the world of music and the way people are tracking albums too. The way that perhaps people are more likely to put a song that might have been in the middle of an album or years ago right at the top now. I know some musicians who've told me that the streaming services do push people to do that. Because attention spans are what they are, and they want to grab people right from the off. I think in a more traditional approach, maybe you would go more like a baseball lineup, get a couple people on base, then try and have some cleanup hitters in the middle, right, and then do the same thing again, and then finish strong. And I think maybe now we're seeing more. You move those cleanup hitters to the first few songs. In some cases, not of course in all cases, but it's very fascinating to see that both music and wrestling are moving in that same direction. You have to start in a certain way, or at least in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tying it into music here, we're going to be playing album openers. And, really the first song on the album, it can not only be the best song, it can also be the most important one as well. As you mentioned there, Chris, it can really set the tone for what the album is going to be, get people amped up, keep them listening. And the same goes for a wrestling show too. A great opener can really get the fire going in the crowd. And, knock on wood, it will carry through to the rest of the show.
Mm-hmm.
That's why things like card order and match timing and placement is so important for wrestling shows, and that's also why album sequencing is so important as well.
Yeah,
for sure, Chris.
Yeah, especially first album, especially for a band who's doing their first album. I think the first song can be particularly key, even more so than any other album, because it's in many ways you're making a mission statement for what this band is, what this record is, what this song is about. So, and to tie back to what you were saying about AEW, their first ever show, they took the classic pro wrestling guerrilla PWG route. They had a wild 6-man tag to open the show. And, I think first albums, we see a lot of bands do that. Even on later albums, often bands will kind of start that way. But not always. Sometimes people want to maybe go the more traditional route that you still see in Japan, slowly put some pieces in place and build up to it. So it's really, the more I thought about this over the weekend, the more I was just kind of fascinated by how much similarity there is.
Yeah, and we've got certainly in our list here, we have cases where they are the debut albums, and they do start, pretty strongly for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get to our picks here. We have 8 picks each, and I brought a play-out song at the end as well. And for those of you who are listening, yes, we are going to miss one of the 15 million obvious choices to go with. I promise I'll do more of these in the future, but we have 8 picks each. So Chris, you are the guest. You'll start us off here. What's your first pick?
My first pick is Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath from the record Black Sabbath, which was released in 1970. One of the rare songs that exists where it's the first song by a band on their first record where the name of the song is the same as the name of the band is the same as the name of the record, which is a tradition that I think has gone away that people should bring back a little bit more. Like I said, mission statement. Who are you? What are you all about? Black Sabbath in this song perfectly tell you who they are, what they're about, what to expect. The first time I ever heard this song when I was a kid, probably like 12 years old or something like that, just completely blew my mind about the possibilities of what music could be, what was possible, opened up this whole other world to me. So I had to start with this one.
What is this that stands before me? Figure in black, which points at me.
So yeah, like I said, Black Sabbath, telling you everything you need to know about what the sound of Black Sabbath is going to be, what the vibes of this record are going to be. The way that it starts so ominously with the rain and the slow buildup before just kind of exploding into that kind of sense of foreboding and doom that I feel like that song always gives. Like I said, when I was like 12 or 13 years old and I heard that song for the first time, just completely blew my mind. I'd never heard anything like it before. For context, I'm an only child. First time I was a teenager in the 1990s, pre-internet. So I was relying on people to give me things and tell me what to listen to. And my friend Stewie, and to a certain extent his dad, really just kind of turned me on to a lot of that old classic hard rock and metal. And it just really was just such a life-changing experience for me, not having an older brother or somebody else in that role to do that.
Yeah, I was mulling over picking Sabbath for this episode because they have a lot of great openers. Besides this, there's War Pigs, Sweet Leaf, Wheels of Confusion, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, Hole in the Sky. But this is undeniably the big one, and it's not just an important opener; it's one of the most important songs ever. Yeah. It defines the band. It defines an entire genre of music, and it lays the groundwork for a million bands that come after this. And all it takes is those 3 notes and a few missing fingertips. It's that simple. Yeah. And I think what helps as well is just how raw it sounds. It's not a pretty or polished song or album. It sounds very genuinely scary and dingy and demonic. And the whole album is like that. It's all done live in the studio in like one day. Yeah. So you're talking about a working class album from a working class band from, bombed out post World War II England. Really, who better to usher in the doom and gloom of heavy metal than, these guys, Chris, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. There's an excellent Black Sabbath book that was written by Mick Wall, came out maybe 5 years more or so ago, that talks about all the things you just talked about, how they became a band, how they went about recording it, how they were just really just very poor guys, working dead-end jobs, trying to just get out of that milieu and kind of break through and do something different with their lives. And yeah, it's like, I lived in England. I've been to Birmingham, or Birmingham, as they would say. It lends itself to that kind of feeling that record evokes to me. It makes perfect sense to me that they are from there. And yeah, like you say, this defines a genre. So this isn't just a mission statement for Black Sabbath. This is really a mission statement for what that entire 1970s hard rock, heavy metal, whatever you want to call it, movement really kind of became, I think, in many ways. Mm-hmm.
And I actually saw Sabbath on their final tour, and this was the opener for that show.
That's fantastic.
And the experience of hearing the bell, and they all come out, and Tony just hits that riff, and the sheer volume of it was incredible. I could feel like my wallet and my phone vibrating in my pockets. It was so loud. So I was glad to be able to go to that show for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's just worth mentioning Tony Iommi. I didn't realize till I was much older that band is Tony Iommi's band. He rules that band with an iron fist.
Yeah, he's there the whole way through. Yep.
Yeah, yep. And he is, because it's, if you come to it late and then Ozzy's a famous person and there's, he's done all the things he's done. No. Tony Iommi rules that band with an iron fist. I think they even talk about in Mick Wall's book about how he even bullied Ozzy because he was older than him when they were in high school together. So it's it's a fascinating read. I would recommend it for anybody that is interested in Black Sabbath. They really get inside of everything from start to finish.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, my first pick here came out the same year as the first Black Sabbath album, 1970, but it's from a different country, a different genre of music entirely, for sure. This is Curtis Mayfield off of his album Curtis. And this song is called Don't Worry, If There's a Hell Below, We're All Going to Go.
Kinda make you get that feeling. Everybody's smart. Use the pill and the dope. Educated fools from uneducated can be no show. And if there's hell below, we're all gonna go. Everybody praying, and everybody singing.
So I put that song first on my list to complement Sabbath, because this is also a doom and gloom song about hell, but it's from the perspective of a black American in 1970, so it's a different kind of hell. Mm-hmm. It's drugs, it's corruption, it's crime, it's pollution, it's war, it's racism, it's all of society's problems. And as the song says, the leaders keep saying, don't worry, and Curtis is saying, no, worry, because we're all screwed. And you add in the echo effects, you add in the start of the song with the Book of Revelation stuff. It's pretty dark. It's not the first political R&B song, of course, not the last either, but I think it's perfect to represent just the absolute, the real dourness of the 70s, I think, there, Chris.
Yes, it's fascinating that they came out at exactly the same year, like you said, because they are, like you said, they're similar through lines, but just totally different ways of getting there in terms of the sound and the approach to it. Because, and we'll talk about this a little bit later with a different song that's going to come up. Is this is putting, at least musically, like a shine and almost a glimmer onto sad times, that it picks you up, makes you want to dance, you feel good. I was immediately just like getting into a great groove, and then realizing, wait a minute, Curtis is telling me something lyrically different than what the music is telling me, but I still want to keep that groove going, keep dancing, which is, like you said, the exact opposite of Sabbath, who are letting you know how dour and how miserable, and it's raining. It's very different. In Curtis's song, it sounds like the sun is out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting to contrast this with a song that's on the same album, which is Move On Up, mm-hmm. which also talks about the struggles of life and society, but that's much more hopeful. So you've got two different viewpoints here. You've got despair and you've got hope. You have going down below to hell, and you have Move On Up. And Don't Worry opens up side A, Move On Up opens up side B. Mm-hmm. And if all that's on purpose, then that is very clever on Mr. Mayfield's part, for sure there, Chris. Yeah,
I would assume it is on purpose, and I think that's some of the magic of the traditional approach to album tracking that we talked about, especially in a vinyl age where you do have that separation between side A and side B, which is lost when you're listening to things digitally as well. And, again, just to really tie it together to Sabbath, like you said, it starts with that excellent, very nice spoken word section with like biblical references, and then of course Black Sabbath are talking about a very different kind of biblical revelation, I think, as well. So I think it's wonderful that we ended up with these two kind of counterpart songs from the same year with a similar situation, but just executed in the exact opposite ways.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what's next for you there, Chris?
Okay, so what's next is I picked a song that I'm kind of hoping a lot of people aren't familiar with the artist. I think it's a great introduction to him. So the song is called Plague. It's by an artist called Mike Kroll, also out here in Los Angeles, from his 2013 record Trust Fund, his second album. And it's a very different way to do an opening song than most albums.
And you'll see why right now.
I think your love is a plague, and I wanna run away from you. Goddamn, and I wanna run away from you. And I wanna run away from you.
30 seconds, a complete song in 30 seconds. It has a verse, it has a chorus, it has a bridge, it has a chorus. That's something on the first two Mike Kroll records, which he self-released and then were later reissued by Merge Records once he signed to Merge. Both originally released as 10-inch records. On both of those records, he is playing around purposefully with how short can a song be, how short can an album be, what's quality over quantity, And then so he starts Trust Fund, his second album, with a 30-second song that just completely flips the expectation of any kind of starting song on its head without being a little intro or a snippet. It is a complete song.
Yeah, there's the expression "blink and you'll miss it."
Mm-hmm.
This is like sneeze and you'll miss it, or drop something heavy and you'll miss it. Like any quick, loud noise and you'll miss hearing this song. Because, yeah, it's so short. I was surprised at how short it was when I looked it up for the first time because I never heard it before. But, yeah, it's a good example of how album openers don't have to be big, epic, impactful songs. They can be really short, too. And I looked up this album, Trust Fund. Half the songs on this album are less than 2 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is pretty par for the course of this guy, I think there, Chris.
Yeah, certainly those first two records, that was everything. He was, if it was over 2 minutes, it was an epic. And Mike's also an expert in album tracking as well. So this song, Plague, that we just heard, immediately kicks into the second song on the record, which is called Cease and Desist. And it's a perfect way to just kind of jump right into that song as well. Almost like one can't exist without the other in a strange kind of way that they're interrelated. And there's other artists I've seen that do that where the first song is maybe a minute or less, and then it immediately tees up another song. Off the top of my head, the main example I'm thinking of is a band called Rocket from the Crypt's album Scream Dracula Scream starts with a song called Middle, which is about a minute, and then launches into a song called Born in '69. And they always play those two songs together live. You can't really think of one without the other. It's the same way with Mike. If he's playing songs from Trust Fund, he will play those two as a perfect complement to each other. And I think it's just such a fascinating way to just kind of play with the dynamics and play with the way that people put things together and really just surprise people with a 30-second song. And in this streaming age where streamers are telling musicians, hey, you've got to grab the audience attention right away and put the important songs and the big songs right up front. I think, even though this is a little bit right before that became the motif that people were pushing, I think that Plague is just like an excellent way of examining those dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I think of opening songs this short, they are, as you alluded to there, they're called intro, they're called introduction, they're called prelude or something like that. They're not an actual full song. They're just, a little piece of music leading into track 2, which is the real opener of the album. But not the case here. It's got a title and everything. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's a skit, or it's a little bit of spoken word, it's just a couple of riffs. So yeah, I've never seen somebody pull off what Mike pulled off here, which is like I said, a complete song in 30 seconds that has elements of a traditional song structure. So that's why I immediately had to put it down at number 2 after Sabbath, because I was just like, this one I think is its own little unique island. And
yeah, two big opposites there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and if people liked that, they should definitely listen to the rest of Trust Fund, because I think it's a great place to start with his discography.
Mm-hmm. Okay, my next pick here. This is a lady from Kent, England, and her name is Kate Bush. And in 1985, she put out an album called Hounds of Love. And for her opening track, she put on her running shoes to go running up that hill. So I know that this song really kicked into pop culture overdrive the past couple of years because of Stranger Things. And people might be sick of this, and I get it, but I'm not sick of it. So it's a really amazing song. And I think I think it sums up Kate Bush pretty well. Beautiful, and also kind of strange and a bit unnerving all at once. Because she is a very eclectic person who is not constrained by one style of music or one certain way of doing things. And for a big hit, this is number 3 in the UK, it's an eclectic song. You know, it has all these synths and the sampling and the vocal work and the balalaika on there too. It's not what you would call a conventional pop song in the least, but it's a real attention grabber, especially as an opener. And it leads into Hounds of Love and The Big Sky and the rest of the album there. So, yeah, when I saw this, come up in my iTunes as I was scrolling through, I figured, hey, let's go with this one, Chris,
Yeah, I also love this song. I love Kate Bush. I have to be honest, I never saw Stranger Things. So when all of a sudden this song became just like everywhere, I was really confused. I was happy because I love Kate Bush and I think this song rules. But I was like, what's going on here? And then someone explained it to me and I was like, okay, that's great. That's fantastic. Can we surface more of these great artists from the 80s that maybe younger people don't know about? I have to be honest, a lot of my Kate Bush listening is really more around, listening to the greatest hits. Sometimes with a lot of the legacy artists, I get lazy. I listen to greatest hits. I actually really like greatest hits albums as a concept. I've even made some bootleg greatest hits albums myself for other bands. So I was shocked and surprised when I was like, oh, this is an album over. Fantastic. It's maybe my second favorite Kate Bush song that is out there. The video is really, good. I think you described it perfectly. It is beautiful, but it's strange. And that, I think, is the perfect way to describe everything she did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of those songs where I actually heard a cover of it first before the original. Because the band Placebo did a version of this, and I heard that one first. And then I listened to the original, and I was like, oh, this is also really great. Like, I love both of them. And, this is the song that introduced me to Kate Bush, just in general. And, yeah, I'm not, like, a huge fan of hers, but she's got some real good stuff. And, again, someone who is not chasing trends, not chasing fame. She moves to the beat of her own drum. So, if you listen to her stuff, it's a bit out there at times, for sure. But some of the best music is out there, Chris. So, yeah.
Yeah, it rewards listening to Kate Bush for sure. And it's interesting that you said that you had heard the Placebo cover of this first before you heard her version. Because I think a lot of people of a certain age perhaps, heard Hounds of Love be covered by a different band before they heard the Kate Bush version as well. Because about 20 years ago, it was covered by a British band called the Futureheads. That were part of that kind of like mid to late aughts British indie scene. And it's an excellent cover. It's like a faithful but also not faithful cover of Hounds of Love. I really enjoy the cover. I've definitely, in the time in which I was living in the UK, being out, being drunk, dance to that song, had a great time. I love the original. The original also has a fantastic video. So I think it's like, there's all these, because Placebo, a very different band than the Futureheads, both of which very different artists, Kate Bush, but all of them seeing the ability to be like, I can take this song, I can make it work for my style, I think also speaks to the eclecticness and just the, how enduring her work is.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Okay, what's your next pick there, Chris?
I'm sorry, I have one more thing on Kate Bush.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Because you're a big Peter Gabriel fan, I understand.
That's right, yes. And she's on a couple of his songs. Games Without Frontiers was the first one from his third album, and then Don't Give Up, the duet, which is just a gorgeous song.
And I assume you've seen the video for that, where it's just the two of them kind of awkwardly hugging and spinning around. Before. It's one of my... I don't understand who greenlit that video, whose idea it was, why they agreed. It's maybe the strangest video I've ever seen, but it's also perfect for the pair of them because they're such weirdos.
They are they're a good pair for sure, given their energies and their vibes. I think definitely. But okay, what's next for you there, Chris?
Okay, up next is a band that I'm on the record as saying I think is one of the most important American bands of the last 50 years, but also a band that probably most people in America have never heard of. So from their 1980 debut record, Is This Real? This is the Wipers with their song Return of the Rat. So the Wipers, a band from Portland, Oregon. So I think that comes through a little bit in the sound as well. Like we're talking about like Black Sabbath with Birmingham. I think also with the Wipers with that Pacific Northwest vibe coming through there. So the Wipers, Greg Sage, singer, guitarist, really recorded all of their music. He is a completely one-of-a-kind individual musician. Like I said, I think the Wipers is a band that's incredibly important to me. I think they're just an excellent, their influence is wide-ranging. If you talk to musicians from all kinds of different guitar bands, they will talk to you about the Wipers if the subject comes up. I think Greg Sage is just an American icon that people don't know about. And I think it's an excellent case, and he is a single-minded person that wants to do things entirely his way and with no external input. He fell out with almost everybody he ever worked with, labels, musicians, anybody involved, because he is laser focused on getting the sound that he wants to out of his music.
Yeah, this is another band where I did not know who this was before hearing them. This is my first time hearing them, and honestly, it didn't really grab me all that much, but I knew right away how much influence a band like this has on the bands that come afterwards from the Pacific Northwest. And yeah, look them up. They had a huge influence on Nirvana, Mudhoney, the Melvins, that entire region basically, and Nirvana actually did a cover of this song as well. So you can definitely hear the influence of what will become grunge in terms of the sound and the mood. This tight, frantic, and distortion, anxiety, all that stuff. The seeds of grunge are definitely being planted in this, garden of a song there, Chris.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up the Nirvana cover of this, because that's how I became aware of the Wipers, is because first of all, Kurt Cobain would mention them in interviews periodically at the height of his fame. But then also, there was an outtake of them doing a cover of this song that was later released on their compilation that's called With the Lights Out, which was really the first time I heard this. And then I took that deep dive into the Wipers. And there's a lot of other... So the Seattle scene that you called out, clearly an influence here. A lot of those bands, we'll talk about the Wipers. Also, there's also bands from the DC hardcore, from the pre-emo post-punk bands from across the country as well. There's all kinds. The tentacles of the Wipers go deep across the alternative rock, college rock roots, really, of America throughout the 1980s, 1990s. And actually, in many ways, there are better, more immediately grab you Wiper songs, but we're starting with the opening song here, and I think it sets the vibe and it sets the scene, even if it's maybe not one of the top 5 to 10 Wiper songs that I would tell somebody to listen to, but it does set the stage of who they are and what Greg Sage is all about. I think.
Yeah, I was reading up about the band and about Greg Sage. He's still alive, still in his 70s.
Yep.
And he's done a lot of producing, a lot of recording out of a recording studio that he's made of his own. And yeah, he's just one of those guys who is content with doing his thing and not really being famous. I read how after Nirvana made it big, Kurt asked him to open for them on tour, and he just said, no thank you. Which, I mean, look, it's Nirvana, early 90s, that is prime real estate. If you're, an opening band, like you would do anything to open for them, but not him apparently. So yeah, he's his own soul for sure there, Chris, yeah.
I don't think there's anybody else that would have said no to that offer, because, like you say, that's as good an offer as you're going to get in 1992, 1993, Nirvana at the peak of their powers and fame. Yeah, but like I said, he's monomaniacally focused on his thing, and he's not going to be able to have that focus and control if you're opening for, at that time, probably the most famous band in the world, no matter how much reward or fandom you might create and get out of that. So in many ways, I truly admire Greg Sage for being his own man. I was trying to think if there was a wrestling equivalent of Greg Sage. Not quite sure there is, because wrestling really is a team sport, even with all the politics and the BS and the nonsense, everything you have to have. I don't think you can be that far out on your own and really get anywhere. But people would say Greg Sage didn't get anywhere, so maybe that is the trade-off.
Also, when I see the title of the song, I just want to do Mark Morrison, Return of the Mac, but it's Return of the Rat. Return of the Rat. I can't help myself.
Yeah.
I got to do it every time, but
it's a great song, and every time you hear it, it's stuck in your head for days, or at least it is for me.
Yeah. Okay, my next pick is something completely different than that. A little less harsh, I think. And it's a bunch of guys from your neck of the woods there, Chris, California.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Beach Boys off of their big album Pet Sounds. This is, of course, the opener, Wouldn't It Be Nice?
Wouldn't it be nice if we were older, then we wouldn't have to wait so long? And wouldn't it be nice to live together in the kind of world where we belong? No one's gonna make it that much better when we can say goodnight and stay together. Wouldn't it be nice if we could wake up in the morning when the day is new? Every habit's spent the day together, hold each other close the whole night through. What happy times together we've been spending. I wish that every kiss was never ending. Oh, wouldn't it be nice? Maybe if we think and wish and hope and pray.
Yeah, that is such a pleasant-sounding song on what's probably the most pleasant-sounding album ever. It's all just very lovely. And we played God Only Knows a few episodes ago, and it's very similar in terms of having just the most gorgeous music and vocals and harmonies, and it's just so layered sonically. But the actual lyrics are melancholic. Wouldn't it be nice if we were older and married and, we could be together all the time instead of now when we can't? Like, there's a little complexity to the song beyond just, it sounds nice, and I think it does set up the rest of the album quite well, because the album is also at least, musically complex in terms of its production history there, Chris.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about when we talked about Curtis saying that, the music is sunshine, but the lyrical content maybe is less so. And that's especially true as you get further into Pet Sounds. And this one is exactly, it almost like tricks you, lulls you into a false sense of security about how sunny and shiny everything is. And as you go through that, you really get inside that maybe, Brian Wilson's headspace isn't the best at that time. And it's really just the sonic, the production, the sonic qualities that you talked about there. It's fascinating to me that whether they knew it or not, Brian Wilson was locked into a game of one-upsmanship with the Beatles on production quality. Each subsequent record that they would make and that he would make, he was constantly trying to one-up what they had did and go one step further and continue to raise the bar. And to this day, I have no idea if anyone's even asked Paul McCartney his take on that, or if anybody asked John Lennon before he passed, whether they were aware of it, whether they were reciprocating or not, because it's fascinating that was the motivation he needed to continue to raise the bar. And Pet Sounds is, in the absolute top echelon of greatest sounding records, especially for the year, the time in which it was made in the 60s, with the tricks and tools that were available to them now compared to then. It's unbelievable how this record continues to sound incredible to this day. There's few things that have touched it even after 50 years.
Yeah, I'm fairly positive that Paul McCartney has said Pet Sounds inspired Sgt. Pepper's. I'm almost entirely positive that he said that. And I think what always amazes me about Pet Sounds is that it wasn't this universally adored hit when it came out. It was widely praised in the UK, not so much in the US, and it didn't sell as well as previous Beach Boys albums. And Brian Wilson was crushed by that because he put so much into this thing. I mean, it's basically his album, but nowadays it's considered one of the best albums ever and a huge inspiration and all that. So yeah, it's one of those things where it can really take time for an album to really, sink into someplace and into people's minds and really get the praise that I think it deserves.
Yeah, it's fascinating when that happens. In the 60s, you see that with this album. In the 70s, you see that, or maybe it's the early 80s with Fleetwood Mac's Tusk is the same way. And then I think there's every decade, there's records that are like that, where it's like the band takes a swing and it's maybe the public isn't ready to catch up to it yet. And then over time, people catch up to it. And I think that makes sense to some extent with this record because, like we said, it is a little bit more melancholy, introspective. It's not about cars and surfing. It's about more adult themes, more grown-up kind of situations, besides just I'm at the beach having a great time, right?
Mm-hmm.
A little less childlike.
Yeah. And one more thing about this song in particular that always gets me, it's kind of like Born in the USA, where people just misinterpret it so much. Because it's been in so many movies over the years, and like romance montages of sunny days and picnics and skipping through the field, but it ignores the melancholy of the song, except for one movie, the documentary Roger and Me by Michael Moore, because this plays over a montage of Flint, Michigan, which has just been economically destroyed by GM and all of the plant closures. So you have all these shots of run down houses and boarded up shops and people getting fired, and it's like, wouldn't it be nice if we were... Oh, it's a very memorable scene. So I'm not a huge Michael Moore fan, but I do tip my cap to him for recognizing the appropriate tone of the song, I guess, there.
Yes, he gets it.
Mm-hmm. All right, what is next for you there, Chris?
All right, up next for me, we're going to jump into the 1990s, 1995 to be precise. This is the band Pulp from their hit record Different Class. This is the opening song, Misshapes.
Oh, what's the point in being rich if you can't think what to do with it? 'Cause you're so bleeding thick. Oh, we weren't supposed to be. We learned too much at school. Now we can't help but see the future that shit got mapped out is nothing much to shout about. We're making a move, we're making it now. We're coming out of the sideline. Just put your hands up, it's a rage, yeah. We want your homes, we want your lives. We want the things you won't allow us. We won't use guns, we won't use bombs. We use the one thing we've got more of. That's our minds.
All right, so Misshapes, like I said, from Different Class, 1995, the height of Britpop. And Pulp is an interesting kind of study in that Britpop world, because it's like they'd been a band for a very long time before any of that hype blew up, before any of the other bands became, well-known bands. But in many ways, even by 1995, they're still introducing themselves to people, because whilst they'd been a band for a long time, they weren't popular or necessarily successful in the grand scheme of mainstream acceptance until then. And some of the first lyrics in this song are him, Jarvis, really introducing himself and his band by saying, we don't look the same as you, we don't do the things you do, but we live around here too. And I think it's an excellent introduction for the band, and also an excellent kind of meta-narrative for Pulp's role in that wild height of Britpop scene.
Yeah, this is a great song. It's a real, rallying cry for the misfits and the weirdos and dorks, sportos, motorheads, geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, dweebies, dickheads. They think he's a righteous dude. Yeah, what's funny though is that Jarvis Cocker wrote this song as a call to arms against the people who would, beat him up or call him queer or whatever at the club, the townies as he referred to them. But this song is such an undeniable hit that the townies end up becoming fans of the band. Like, this is a #1 album, and the people who made his life miserable are now the ones buying his albums and going to his shows. So there is a strange irony too there, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. And funny, we were just talking about, Nirvana. Kurt Cobain had the same problem, I think, to some extent. But yeah, so more than that, I would say that with the passage of time, it's been 30 years, more or less, give or take a few years, since that height of Britpop. The more distance from that time that I have, and the more I think about all the records that came out during that time, to me, this is easily, far and away, the best overall album from that period, different class. And it is really funny that it is supposed to be the outsidery, underground element to it, but it's nothing but hits. Every song is an absolute bop or a hit or a banger or whatever you want to call it.
Common People, Disco 2000,
Yes.
that this is the album.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like undeniably great. It's almost a best of greatest hits album in and of itself. It's just remarkable how they pulled this as like the fourth or fifth album that they did or something like that. And people usually they find these songs much earlier in their run. A lot of the time, these great songs. I mean, certainly all the other bands from that scene, all their best songs are in their first one or two albums. They have no sustainability in the way that Pulp did. I saw Pulp play at a sold-out show at the Hollywood Palladium, and I think it was in September a couple months ago. It was Jarvis's 61st or second birthday. It was phenomenal. They still have it. They're still fantastic. They have truly just maintained and surpassed everybody else that was doing anything that time, in my opinion. It's just remarkable, because I don't think in 1995 anybody would have predicted that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their last album was 2001, I believe. But they've done, some reunion tours here and there over the years. But yeah, I'm a Pulp rookie for sure, because I've, compared to, Oasis or Blur, I've heard very little of Pulp over the years. Like, I know Common People, obviously, that's a great song. But if I'm being honest, I like the William Shatner version better. I'm not going to lie. That's a great version of that song. So I need to check out some more Pulp in my life, I guess, there, Chris.
Yeah, this album and the albums either side of it are probably, for my taste, the peak of what they've done. But they're packed with hits, and I think they are definitely, if Britpop was wrestling, right, Pulp are an act that was huge in Japan. Puro fans love them, and maybe they never cross over into the United States, but the people that know.
Well, my next pick, again, a little bit different here. We're going back to the 80s, 1980 to be specific, and back to the metal world with this one. And it's not just any band, it's the metal gods themselves, Judas Priest, off of their album British Steel. This is Rapid Fire.
World like a battering ram. Forging the furnace for the final grand slam. Chopping away at the saw, soon the cause will begun. Cleaving a trail of destruction that's second to none. Hammering anvils, straining muscle and might. Shattering blows, crushing browbeating fright. Past devastating and desolating.
So yeah, if ever there was a more appropriate name for this song, it's Rapid Fire. I mean, this thing is a machine gun blast from start to finish. No build-up, no time for a catchy chorus, just go, go, go. The opening line, pounding the world like a battering ram, forging the furnace for the final grand slam. It sums it up right there for sure. I mean, the entire song has this destructive imagery of hammering anvils and shattering blows, cannons of truth. And I think that it's so perfect that this comes at the start of the decade. Much like how the first Sabbath album laid the ground for 70s metal with the doom and gloom and the blues influence, I think this song and this album lay the groundwork for what's to come with 80s metal, which is about power and speed and thrash. A lot of thrash bands credit this album for, getting them started there. So, yeah, for all of the praise that this album gets, it's well-deserved, Chris.
Yeah, so I have to be honest, I'm not super familiar with a lot of Judas Priest work. It's just not, necessarily. I like it, but it's not something I've ever dug into. And this song was I feel like it's the perfect way. It's this song tells me everything I need to know about Judas Priest, basically, or at least this record, basically immediately. It, like you said, this song is a car that's already on the highway going at 70 miles an hour. We didn't have to get accelerating up there. We don't slow down at the end. We just continue to drive 70 miles an hour. And maybe it's not even a car. It's some kind of industrial vehicle or a military vehicle, because the vibe is very much that heavy pounding. I really enjoyed this. I don't even know if I'd ever heard it before. And I was just this is perfect way to start an album. And then the context that you just added about it being the start of that decade of 80s kind of speed metal, perfect. Mm-hmm. Nailed it.
Yeah, and this is also one of those cases where, depending on the version of the album you got, you had a different opener. The original US version of the album opened with some song called Breaking the Law. Maybe you've heard of it. I don't know. Yeah, again, a very iconic Judas Priest song, maybe their most iconic ever, and a fine opener, but to me, Rapid Fire is the better opener, in my opinion, just as a proper statement of intent and a proper harbinger of what's to come with the decade, Chris.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And whoever that sounds to me like an argument between a record label and the band, or management and the band, or somebody where they're saying, no, you got to start with Breaking the Law is fantastic. It's an old-time classic. This is a better opening song. Whoever was on the side of this goes first. I side with them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, your next pick here, Chris, is a bit different than Priest, I think. So why don't you intro it for us?
All right, so staying in the 1980s, 1982 this time, from their fourth album, Toto 4, this is Rosanna by Toto.
I can see your face still shining through the window on the other side. Rosanna, Rosanna, I didn't know that a girl like you could make me feel so sad. Rosanna, all I wanna tell you is now you'll never ever have to compromise. Rosanna, Rosanna, I never thought that losing you could ever hurt so bad. Not quite a year since you went away, Rosanna, yeah. Now she's gone, and I have to say, meet you all the way, meet you all the way, Rosanna, yeah. Meet you all the way.
Yeah, this is a song I hear on the radio multiple times a week. If I'm not driving far, I'll just leave the radio on, one of the classic stations that they play the older music. They play this all the time. It's obvious why. It's such a clear, kind of that era of 1980s adult-orientated rock pop hit. I have to confess, as I get older every year, I feel myself drawn more and more to what we now call yacht rock, which I think this probably fits into. And it's just such an easy listen. It makes you feel like a certain kind of joy, I think, that this song elicits in me. I just had to include it because especially because it's not necessarily a song you would open with, but by the fourth record, I think you definitely open with this song.
Yeah, I'm under no delusions. I know that my musical taste is not the coolest, but I don't care because I love Toto and I love this song. I mean, the drum shuffle from Jeff Porcaro alone is incredible. And then you add everything else, the vocals, the guitar work, the keyboards, the production. I mean, this is such a clean sounding song. Mm-hmm. I think it's a perfect song. And it's a big winner too. I mean, this song alone won 3 Grammys. and Toto 4 won Album of the Year over like Paul McCartney and Billy Joel. So, I will scream to high heaven that Toto deserves respect, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. They have other songs that I love a lot. Hold the Line is like an old-time personal fave. You mentioned some of the production elements of this song. I don't know if you were familiar with the YouTube channel Rick Beato.
I think I've heard of it. Yeah.
He's a producer, musician. He does a lot of stuff on his YouTube channel. One of the things he does is break down songs and the elements of how they've recorded things and how they've put things together and arranged them and how they can elevate the song. He has an excellent video about this song that talks about, he mentioned some of the things you just mentioned and then other things beyond that as well about how all these elements combine to just make this perfect pop song. So I'd recommend that to people if they want to know more about this song or, many other songs. He covers all kinds of things across the genres.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if people are aware of this either, but all of the guys in Toto, beyond the band's own work, they are like prolific session guys. They've worked on so many big songs and albums over the years, from Michael Jackson, Chicago, Pink Floyd, Sonny and Cher, Alice Cooper, Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I think that's the ultimate testament to their skills. Mm-hmm. Like, they're so good. All these other amazing talents are like, we need you. So, if you only know Toto as the Africa band, I urge people to check out more of their stuff, because I guarantee you your toes will be tapping for a lot of their songs. So,
I actually am one of the people that didn't know they'd done all that session work, but it makes perfect sense because the craft is evident in their work. So of course other people are going to want that same craft to come be added to their work. Also, one of my favorite kind of just totally random things about Toto is when I was living in England, the town I was living in, there was a local band who were called Dying for Toto. And for years I was just like, this is just such a strange name. Why is the band called this? And then ultimately I found out it was one of the guys in the band was in a pub and he was sat there at the bar drinking his drink. And then some guy comes in, tells the bartender, gets him a pint of beer, and he tells the bartender, I'm dying for Toto. Will you put Toto on? And I just thought it was this great thing of like, I desperately need to go into this pub right now and listen to Toto and have a drink. So I'd love to know what was going on with that guy's life that day, that he was dying for Toto, but lives in infamy forever for about 50 people.
Maybe it was me. I don't know. In a past life, perhaps. Who knows? But yes. But okay. For my next pick here, we're going to head on over to Germany, over to the Deutschland, for a whole lot of beeps and boops. Yeah. This is Kraftwerk. That's Kraftwerk. This is from their 1977 album Trans Europe Express, and this is a song called Europe Endless.
Life is timeless. Europe endless. Life is timeless. Europe endless. Europe endless. Europe endless.
So another very appropriate title, Europe, because, this is a German band. And when I listen to this song, it does conjure up these visions of Europe and going by train to the European countryside and all that stuff and all these quaint little towns. I do get that feeling. And endless because it's endless. This is a long opener. It's 9 minutes and 40 seconds of the same synth beats and rhythms over and over and over again. And it's very hypnotic and also very soothing, I think. And despite Kraftwerk often getting the label of, robot music, which, fair enough, they are a lot of times, but I think it still manages to evoke some very, very nice emotions, I think, there, Chris.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. When I put it on, and of course, the album cover is like a front-on design of a train, it makes me feel like I'm starting a train ride. It really does, which is, the same thing you said, through those European villages and through the German countryside or wherever Kraftwerk are taking their train to. It's kind of fascinating how it does that. This, kind of like with Judas Priest, immediately tells you everything you need to know about how this Kraftwerk album is where it's gonna take you, how it's gonna take you there. I think it's fascinating that this album is, like, in some ways a study in minimalism, and then, like you say, this song is 9 minutes long.
Yeah, and what's also interesting too is that this is their 6th album, and Kraftwerk did not start this way. They did not sound like this at the beginning. They started off as this very avant-garde, krautrock band, just making noise. Mm-hmm. And then a few albums in, they do Autobahn, and they shift over to, electronic pop. And with this album, they really have fine-tuned the Kraftwerk sound. Lots of repetition, sparse arrangements, monotone vocals, the vocoder, of course. It's an album in a sound that, again, is often very minimal, but is also very influential as well. It's influential in electronic music, in dance, techno, hip-hop. These 4 German robots end up inspiring just a bunch of human beings to make a lot of music there, Chris.
Yeah, this is an absolutely seminal album. If you look at the any list of the best albums, the essential albums you have to hear, hip albums, great albums, cool albums, like whatever it is, whoever put out the list in whichever country, this will be on there. I think that speaks to the influence element that you say, because I think there's a lot of people chasing this sound, this ghost of Kraftwerk, and maybe getting there, maybe not getting there. But without this album, I think there was a whole lot less happening, and like you said, in a lot of different genres, without Kraftwerk kind of laying the train track to really murder this metaphor here.
Well done, sir. Well done. I applaud you for that nice use of metaphor there. But so what's your next pick there, Chris?
Okay, so up next, I was in 1982 with Rosanna. I'm still in 1982 here.
Yes.
This is the band Asia from their debut 1982 album Asia, and this is Heat of the Moment.
Do you remember when we used to dance? And incidents arose from circumstance. One thing led to another, we were young, and we would scream together songs unsung. It was the heat of the moment, telling me what my heart meant. The heat of the moment showed in your eyes. And now you find yourself in 82. The disco hotspots hold no charm for you. You can't concern yourself with bigger things. You catch a pull and ride the dragon's wings. 'Cause it's the heat of the moment. The heat of the moment. The heat of the moment showed in your eyes.
All right, so Asia, heat of the moment. So Asia, it's supergroup, if we want to use that term. I know different people feel different ways about the term supergroup, but, this is Steve Howe from Yes. It's Carl Palmer from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and then it's some lesser-known musicians, John Wetton from King Crimson, Jeff Downs also from Yes. And I feel like a certain way about supergroups, which is, we kind of touched on this in our opening earlier, about, if you want to start a wrestling show off with a bang, I think with a supergroup, I feel like you have to start especially your first album, but really any album off with a monster hit, which I think is what they did here. So it's like that Pro Wrestling Guerrilla approach, the PWG classic opening 6-man tag. That's all action, all high spots, all bang, 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 bang. That's what you have to open. Like, I feel like that's, if you're a supergroup, you're kind of required to show us why you're a supergroup by opening with just like a peak hit, which is what I believe Asia did with this song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are following Toto with Asia, so you are a man after my own heart, good sir. Because I picked this album for the debut albums episode I did with Mora a few months ago. So the listeners are well aware of my deep, deep love for the band Asia. And yeah, with Heat of the Moment, an iconic song, a big, big hit. And it amuses me how for a band that was often, derided as corporate rock, this is such an honest, like, vulnerable song. Like, John Wetton said that it's meant to be an apology to a woman he mistreated. Like, he's saying, I'm sorry, I never meant to be so bad to you. One thing I said that I would never do. So it's not the macho rock and roll swagger you would expect from a big, rock hit sort of thing. It's actually quite vulnerable. So for those of you who, still are not on the Asia bandwagon, tisk tisk, good people, I encourage you to, seek the deeper meaning of this band. But no, in all seriousness, big Asia fan. And this song, I've heard it a million times, but it's still a great song.
Yeah, one of my favorite little anecdotes about this song is, because this is I feel like this is a monster hit. It's been on the radio for 40 years. It's been in all kinds of movies and TV cues, right? It's been all over. And then one Saturday morning a few years ago, I'm kind of walking around the house singing the chorus of this song to myself. And my wife asked me, "What are you singing?" And I was like, "I'm singing Heat of the Moment." And she's like, "No, she thought I just made up some weird song in a moment. And then she thought I was doing a bit and that I wasn't really and that I was like, so I had to pull up the YouTube video and be like, look, it's Asia. We play the song. And she's like, eventually like, oh yeah, okay, I know this. But it was just like this, I'll probably never forget for the rest of my life, her thinking that I was doing some bizarre, and in her defense, I do all kinds of weird bits all the time. So it's perfectly reasonable. Just that I, as if I would have the talent to make up Heat of the Moment by Asia. Just a perfect song.
Honey, his name is Jeff Downs. He was in the Buggles. I promise you this is real. I promise you. Yeah. Well, I'm going to stick to the 80s here. Another 80s song here. 1980. This is from their third album called Making Movies, a band called Dire Straits. And this is Tunnel of Love.
It's just a danger. And when you're riding at your own risk, she said you're a perfect stranger. She said, baby, let's keep it like this. It's just a kick, walk, twist and maybe you step right up and see. Hey mister, give me two now, 'cause any two can play. And the big wheel keep on turning, neon burning up above, it ends as high on the world. Come on, take a low ride with me, girl, on a tunnel of love, love. When it's been money for muscle on another worldly gig, money for muscle and another girl I dig, another hustle just to make it big and rock away, rock away.
Yeah, I just love that Mark Knopfler guitar sound. I can pick that thing out, right away. So distinct. And Mark Knopfler, not just a great guitar player, he's a great songwriter as well. The storytelling and the imagery here are of a guy finding love at a theme park. It's also vivid, and it's actually based on Knopfler's hometown theme park when he was growing up called Spanish City, which is name dropped in the song. So it's drawing from real life. Just a great, great song. He's someone I consider to be like the Bruce Springsteen of Newcastle, England. And I say that knowing that Springsteen also did a song called Tunnel of Love, but I like this one a lot more, Chris. So, yeah.
Yeah, we can be co-members of the Mark Knopfler Appreciation Society. I think that was a really astute thing that you said about how everybody knows that he's maybe like a top 3, top 5 all-time guitar wizard genius. he's a very underrated lyricist. I agree with you on that. He tells a story in a way that actually I think does kind of tie into his Northern English, Scottish roots, that kind of storytelling style that I experienced in my time there. And I actually had a Dire Straits song on my cut list that didn't quite make my 8 from a different Dire Straits record. So I was really happy when you had also picked one out, because it was a tough cut for me, very much so. But A Ton of Love is great. And Mark Knopfler, this I think was the last record he made with his brother before they went their separate ways. And I think in the style of musicians who worked together and then stopped working together who were related, it got petty, and he re-recorded all of his brother's parts, if I remember correctly, which I also love, because it's back to Greg's age. It's that like mono focus on the details. I think Knopfler's big on that.
Mm-hmm. And like Europe Endless, this is another long opener too. This is 8 minutes. And the thing about Dire Straits is they were never shy about having the longer songs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's evidenced on the next album, Love Over Gold, because the opener on that is Telegraph Road, and that's 14 minutes long. So make no mistake, I could have gone with a much, much longer Dire Straits opener for this episode, that's for sure. But I picked Ton of Love instead there, Chris. So
yeah, absolutely. Telegraph Road, the song, is almost as almost as long as the road itself. I think. But yeah, no. And the other thing that they do that's long is, and I'm sure you've spent as much time in the content mines as I have looking for as many great versions of Sultans of Swing live as there are. Yeah. I have a playlist with like 10 live versions of Sultans of Swing on it, as I try to examine which one's my favorite. And I can never decide, because if it's not 8 to 10 minutes, it's not, the version. I think a hole I fell into and couldn't get out of a few years ago until I wrote my way out of it was Live Aid, 1985 original Live Aid. And I think I've settled on this versions of Sultan of Swing from Live Aid is maybe the best version I've found so far on YouTube. It's that or the Alchemy version, I think. But I ended up making a whole playlist of the best of Live Aid. But that is a real high watermark of everything kind of about Knopfler just condensed into one moment in time. At the peak of his powers, 1985, the band is just on fire. It's the big band. It's no longer the small 3-4-piece band. And if I need to really get my focus on and dial into some work, I will put that 10-song Sultans of Swing on repeat and let that riff just work its way into my head while I crank out a spreadsheet or whatever it is I'm working on. And I thank Knopfler for that, because without it, I would be having a harder time.
Yeah, I could listen to him noodle all day long. I love the Alchemy version. That's my go-to there for sure. But people like noodlers. They don't like noodlers. I like noodlers, especially when they're Mark Knopfler and they sound like him. So yeah,
yes, agreed.
Yeah. But okay, I believe your next pick is your second to last one there, Chris. What you got?
It is. So I wanted to get something at least relatively, recent from the last few years. What I settled on from 2022 from their debut album, which is called Versions of Modern Performance, out of Chicago. This is the band Horse Girl and their song Anti-Glory.
Dancing
right? So Horse Girl, or as I have decided, they are the first great Gen Z indie rock band. They made that record where they were all still in high school, if you can believe that. They're part of a pretty good-sized DIY movement in Chicago of other people their age. There's a band called Lifeguard, who's also excellent. Also, teenagers when they made their first records. Horse Girl, that record came out of Matador. A bunch of high school kids had a somewhat of a label bidding war that was won by, an institution like Matador Records. That gave me so much hope for the future because as, times move on, I feel like people are getting less and less interested in guitar music and more interested in computer music or pop music or whatever it is. So for me, like an indie rock, college rock, whatever you want to call it, Lover, it's great to see that this is now starting to bubble up in certain places and move forward in that way. And there's a whole lot more I can say about this song, but I'll let you chime in first.
Okay, well, yeah, I had never heard of these people before. I assumed with a name like Horse Girl, there was at least one girl in the band, and turns out there's three of them. It's an all-female trio, so yeah, good stuff there. And I dug this song a lot. Listening to it, I got kind of Sonic Youth vibes, or similar post-punk indie band vibes from them. And I looked them up. Apparently, when this album came out, they were all, two of them had become college freshmen, and one of them was still a high school senior. So the music that they are emulating and influenced by came out at least a decade before they were even born. So, a very interesting sound to them for sure.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it there exactly. It's the sound they're channeling and purposefully channeling there. Like you mentioned, Sonic Youth. There's a lot of the other post-punk touch points in there. It's some of it's much older than them. Some of it's much older than people older than them, right? But I think that it's a fascinating thing for them to be, that in that 18 to 22, that Gen Z kind of range, to be able to just kind of mainline any type of music from the last 40, 50 years or more, and just be able to just have complete access to it in a way that I never did when I was that age, and I'm sure many other people older than them didn't. And then you can kind of almost arrive fully formed as a band and know exactly what you want to do and how you want to do it. And the person that recorded this record worked on Dinosaur Jr. records. They recorded it at Steve Albini's studio in Chicago, Electric Audio. So there's all these touch points to the last 30, 40 years of classic alt rock or, college rock, indie rock, whatever you want to call it. And they've been able to just consume everything, filter out what's good, and just have this perfect kind of union of the three of them where it came out. That riff will get stuck in my head for days at a time. I was truly, the first time I heard this record, I was absolutely blown away in a way that I hadn't been. And then I started doing the research on who are these people, like you said. And it's like, wait, they made this record when they were 16 and 17 years old? I couldn't barely even tie my shoelaces when I was 17 years old, let alone make like an all-time great record. So like I said, it gave me so much hope. Then I started thinking like a little bit about, because, we're trying to do the parallels a little bit with wrestling here. This is the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. There's always some kind of correlation, right? Are there, Gen Z wrestlers or wrestlers in their 20s who have been able to consume the entirety of the last 30 years of wrestling and arrive so fully formed in the way the Horse Girl did? I think there is, right?
I don't know. I mean, if I think of super young wrestlers, Nick Wayne comes to mind, or some of these young guys in Japan or whatever, like Dragon Gate or whatever. I don't know. I mean, there's the history of wrestling is quite vast, Chris. I think you would agree with that. So
absolutely. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's an interesting parallel.
No. It's totally fine. Yeah, it's between training and between just being a kid growing up. How much time do you have to consume this stuff? Because there is a lot of stuff out there. You can't get to everything. So
how do you find the right things? Like Horse Girl certainly did. Yeah. I think I hate to give too much credit to the devil, but I think maybe MJF is a person that you can see clearly was able to study the history of territorial wrestling in a way that no other 20-year-old would have been able to do before, and arrive kind of, if not in ring, at least, as a personality, more fully formed than maybe most people 22 years old would have been able to do before in the earlier days. But not to detract here a little bit, but yeah, this is why I wanted to pick something modern to say that, you know, you can still do this. And that song opens the record, and it's not just that streaming thing of we have to do like the best song or a great song first. It also perfectly sets up the rest of the album, which is tracked very much in the style of an album from 30, 40 years ago as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just cool that there are still bands this young that are, you know, picking up guitars and basses and drums and not just, you know, automatically going to pop or you know, hitting a few buttons on a computer or whatever. So anytime we can keep that flame alive for the younger generations, I think is always pretty cool. So yeah.
It's the hope I needed for the future.
Yes. Exactly. Well, speaking of the future, I'm also going to play a song from the new millennium, the far future of 2000. This is Radiohead from their album Kid A, a song called Everything in Its Right Place.
Yesterday I woke up sucking a lemon. Yesterday I woke up sucking a lemon. Yesterday I woke up sucking a lemon. Yesterday I woke up sucking a lemon.
Speaking of hitting buttons on computers, I think as far as like album openers that not only establish the sound of the album, but are also like a big shock to the system, this is up there. Because, you know, Radiohead had dabbled a little bit in electronica with OK Computer, but this is just diving right into the Matrix. I mean, I could only imagine the Radiohead fan in 2000 who put this on after listening to, you know, Creep or Just or Paranoid Android, and they're hearing, you know, like, what the hell is this? And I'm kind of one of them. Like, I prefer earlier guitar-based Radiohead. I love the Bends. That's a great album. But I think this is still a great song, too. And it's a real ear catcher of an opener in more ways than one, Chris.
Yes, it certainly is. I'm in a tough spot here. I don't want to turn heel on you so late in the show, but I'm not a Radiohead fan. I've really never enjoyed any of their work that I've heard. But I went into this, I tried to be open-minded, put all my prejudice aside, and I think you're right. It is fascinating that this song and then Kid A itself, how they kind of just did a hard pivot away from their work in the 1990s, right? I would imagine a lot of people probably didn't get a long way past the first few songs. I don't fully know exactly how their fan base reacted to this record. I was glad I didn't have to listen to too much more of it, if we're honest. But again, I'm not trying to be rude. It didn't work for me.
That's fair enough. You know, I totally get it. I mean, again, like I said, this is not my favorite Radiohead sound. I prefer the earlier stuff. But you know, it's one of those classic stories where burnout leads to change. There's a documentary about Radiohead called Meeting People is Easy, about the OK Computer tour. And you see the band over time as the tour goes on just get more and more burnt out and just emotionally and spiritually destroyed. And by the end, Tom York, the lead singer, he is done. He is a straight up mess. And the song is about that. The lyrics, they might seem like nonsense, but it's about depression. It's about just having just a messed up headspace. And this sound was their way of recharging, starting clean, wipe the slate, and get back on track. And yeah, whether or not you like the beeps and boops, this was still a massive hit. This was a #1 album, Grammy Award winner, and it kept the band going. And they haven't, you know, been this way the entire time since. They've, kind of mixed and matched here over the years. But this is definitely a giant sea change. And it is, quite a dividing line for, some Radiohead fans for sure.
Yeah, essentially, that's a subject that I'm fascinated in. I've got like half of an article written about this, about when you have that monster hit record, like they did with OK Computer, right? Or like Nirvana did with their big hit record, which
Nevermind.
It's fallen out of my head. Thank you, Nevermind. Or, like Fleetwood Mac did with Rumors, or there's all kinds of examples of this. What do you do next, right? There's really a few options. So you can make another version of the same record, and it's never quite as good, but it'll do okay, and the label will be happy. That's kind of what the Strokes did with their second record. Or you can, do nothing for an incredibly long time and just let time pass and reset and then start over. Or you can take a hard pivot, which is what I think you're saying Radiohead did here, which is what Fleetwood Mac did with Tusk, which is what Nirvana did with In Utero. And it's really interesting to see how bands approach that moment. And I think that moment has maybe passed because people don't have monster records like that right now. And if they do, they're a pop artist who are just going to make another kind of pop record. So it's really interesting to see. So I do have a lot of respect for Radiohead making that hard pivot and not just doing the same thing over and taking care of their own needs and kind of responding to everything you just explained from that tour there. So yeah, it's fascinating. It's a subject I'm kind of really interested in, how people respond to that and the decision-making process that goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, we see it in wrestling all the time too. Guys kind of get stuck in a rut and they do a gimmick change. They change promotions. They go from face to heel or heel to face just to change things up.
Yep.
And it can be quite different. I remember when Pac turned heel in WWE when he was still Neville. And it turns out, oh my God, he's an amazing heel. Like, how had we never, seen this before out of this guy? So yeah, just a change can be good. It can be bad. People can be indifferent towards it. But more often than not, change can be very interesting. And I think with Radiohead changing with this album, they certainly stayed interesting for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. Certainly now you've just made me think about what if Chris Jericho's wrestling career was a series of albums and how different each one would be.
Oh my God, yeah, just eclectic to say the least for sure.
That's an article for itself. Okay.
Yeah. All right, what is your final pick, Chris?
My final pick is, I think, probably the most important song in wrestling in the year of 2024. It's Final Countdown by Europe from their Final Countdown album that came out in 1986. Like I said, maybe the most important song in wrestling this year. I've heard that song so many times this year because of Bryan Danielson, and I've just gotten a kick out of hearing it every time. It's just a perfectly dumb song for a perfectly dumb sport/art, whatever you want to describe wrestling as. They're like natural bedfellows.
Yeah, this is the Bryan Danielson song to me, and it always will be. And it still works as the Bryan Danielson song. Like, at this point, I've heard this song a million times. In wrestling, out of wrestling, whatever. You get kind of numb to it, but you put this in the context of Bryan Danielson making his entrance for a big match, and damn it, you got me. I'm feeling these feelings again, these emotions, damn it. And I think the story goes, Bryan was reading a list of, like, the worst songs of all time, and this was on the list, which I disagree with, but, Bryan, being the cheeky boy we all know him to be, I think he decided to come out to this song, and history is made from then on. And I'm really glad that, Tony Khan ponying up the money for the song on several occasions for Bryan's AEW run, because it's not cheap, but it's worth it. Like, him coming out at Wembley Stadium to this song is worth, the $500,000 or whatever it is easily, Chris.
Yes, I agree. It was perfect from Wembley. And not just because those Brit Rest crowds love to sing anything so much. So you may as well have them sing something that's, actually good and makes sense and is contextually appropriate to them going off and singing whatever they're singing for the sake of it. But yeah, I mean, everything you said, I agree with completely. It's, the genre is called arena rock for a reason. It's supposed to be sung by however many thousands of people in an arena or a stadium. And I just, first of all, I'm not 100% sure I believe that Bryan Danielson chose it because it was bad. I think he's smart enough to know that it's a perfect song to make an entrance with. Wrestlers lie. It is what it is. Maybe he's telling the truth. I have a little bit of doubt there. But also, what he couldn't have known when he picked the song, like however many years ago, decade and a half ago, whenever he started using it, he couldn't have known that it would end up being so perfect for the retirement run with the way that the lyrics coincide and just everything, just the perfect kind of momentum to carry him through, those big moments at the end there. And to me, like that moment of the crowd singing this song as he makes his way to the ring in Wembley Stadium, 50,000 people, however many it was that were there, is one of the top 2 or 3 things that I've seen in wrestling this year, more so than the match. I think I was a little lower on that match than other people, but the moment with the song at the start and at the end too, just the kind of perfect thing that you can only really pull off in the art, sport, genre, whatever it is that wrestling represents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I consider myself lucky I got to see him come out to this song live, because I missed the entire classic ROH run, and at All Out last year, when he came out for his match against Ricky Starks, I was in the VOW suite, and we had no idea this was coming. But I remember hearing the durr, and I look at Rich, and I was like, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening. It's happening. And, I'll never forget that moment, just seeing him come out to the song and actually, screaming the words, "It's the final countdown," with the entire crowd. That's a proper moment right there with a capital M. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. It's perfect for wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Okay, my last pick here. This is from the iconic, the legendary Johnny Cash. And this is from the last album that came out before he died. This is from 2002, American 4, The Man Comes Around. And this is the title track, The Man Comes Around.
Till Armageddon, no shalom, no shalom. Then the father hen will call his chickens home. The wise men will bow down before the throne, and at his feet they'll cast their golden crowns. When the man comes around, whoever is unjust, let him be unjust still. Whoever is righteous, let him be righteous still. Whoever is filthy, let him be filthy still. Listen to the words long written down. When the man comes around, hear the trumpets, hear the pipers, 100 million angels singing. Multitudes are marching to the big kettle drum. Voices calling, voices crying.
So this is one of my favorite albums ever. I adore this album. The big song on it is the cover of Hurt, which is amazing, but I wanted to show some love to this song because I think it's just as powerful. It's basically Bible the song, because there's all these Bible references. It leans very heavily into Armageddon and the end of days, Judgment Day. And yeah, look, contextually, when this album comes out, Johnny Cash's days are numbered. He dies less than a year after this album debuts. And he had written this song years before this, but the context of it all and that just weathered, affected voice of his, even if you're not Christian or religious, I think this song still packs a real emotional punch. So yeah, I wanted to pick this last because I couldn't see myself having a song follow this, really, Chris.
Makes perfect sense. I agree with everything you said. And I also agree. I of everything on American 4, I think this is my favorite thing that's on there. And also, it's, if not one of the last songs of his own that he wrote, it's certainly one of the last ones that he recorded, because a lot of the other songs on there are covers or songs that were written by other people, right? So it definitely feels like a good way to wrap up a career, as it were, although I'm sure that was on his mind. He may have recorded other things after this, but yes, it's very touching. You know, it's also like, I don't know that Johnny Cash could have made the song when he was younger. Maybe that's why he never recorded it, or didn't have a version recorded that he settled on until much later in his life. Right? So, because it is kind of a natural closer, not just to a playlist, but to a career, and in his case, a life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird. You know, I've listened to this album so much, and the American Recording series so much, that this is kind of the voice I'm used to hearing from Johnny Cash. Like the normal, deep, hello, I'm Johnny Cash. Like, that's not him to me. This is him, which is pretty strange, but I never thought that he sounded bad here. Like, I think the emotion and the strength of the music and the courage of it all, it just kind of, it overcame those feelings to me. So, yeah, I'm a big Johnny Cash fan, and I played this album a lot over the years. So, yeah, I just wanted to show some love.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's fascinating that you say that, because for me, the Cash that I think of, that I hear the most, is some of the, the earlier years, the classic era almost, the stuff that my parents would play, or that you would hear kind of before he made those American records with Rick Rubin and folks. So to me, it's always the opposite. I'm just like, oh, this version of Johnny is very different than the one I'm used to, but it's equally great.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, that was our list. Those were our picks. Again, some obvious picks, some not so obvious picks. But this was a fun time regardless, Chris. Again, thank you so much for being here. Your first time on, and you nailed it, man. Thanks so much.
Oh, I appreciate it. This was the most amount of fun. I will come back anytime if you'll have me. And I have a list of songs, almost 8 songs that I cut from this. So this topic, any other topic, there's a lot of great album openers, and there's even some others that had wrestling tie-ins that we didn't get to. So I'm sure you had as long a list too.
Oh yeah, this was a tough one. This was a real, anytime you get these big subjects like these, it's always tough to, parse your list down. But that's why we have volumes 2 and 3 and 7 and all those other episodes. So
yeah,
in the far off future. So any plugs you want to give at all, Chris? Go right ahead.
I guess I would say, as we're getting towards the end of the year, and people are starting to think about end of year lists, I would plug the article I wrote, Voices of Wrestling, about a month ago, about the wrestler Sari, for your consideration. Wrestler of the Year, Most Outstanding, Promoter of the Year, Booker of the Year, Match of the Year. I explained the pros and cons of all the choices for her, and all of those different awards. I don't think anybody's had a year quite like her in an incredibly long time. And I think it's flying under the radar a little bit, because it's primarily happening in indie companies and smaller companies out in Japan. I would encourage people to check that out. I think that's it. I don't need to plug my music blog right now. We'll get to that another time.
Well, I'll just say that, Music of the Mat, part of the Voices of Wrestling podcast network, voicesofwrestling.com for all of the other episodes, other shows, articles, reviews, and so on and so forth. The Twitter here at Music of the Mat. If you want to leave a comment about this episode or share your picks, voicesofwrestling.com/Discord. I'm in the Discord. Chris, you're in the Discord as well. Make sure you subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or your podcast player of choice, and leave a nice rating or review, please, and thank you. Okay, let's go out here with a play-out song. We started off with some metal. Let's end with some metal here. And let's play another huge metal band, Iron Maiden. They have an excellent album from 1984 called Power Slave. And this is the opener, Aces High. Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you.
Music of the Mad is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. The songs used throughout this show are property of their respective copyright holders.
Do you like wrestling trivia? Then check out the 5-Star Match Game, the Pro Wrestling Quiz Show. I'm Joe Gagney, and every episode, I grill 3 contestants with 5 rounds of power-packed wrestling trivia. We have over 30 evergreen episodes in the archives covering WWE, AEW, Japan, Mexico, and much, 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 much more. Play along at home and check it out today.